Hello there, and welcome back to Heart and Soil with Bree. This is DNDA TV. In today's episode, we're going to talk about container gardening, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, and everything in between, and then we're going to sprinkle some tips and tricks on top and call that a sandwich. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start off with is what type of container should you use? So the first grouping we're going to go over is what I consider to be standard garden container varieties, and this includes things like your ceramic pottery. So the pros for this would obviously be that it's beautiful. It comes in many different varieties of size, of shade, of glazing. These ones with the little water catches on the bottom are nice because it helps ease in drainage, but a lot of the times I'll use these ones inside. Yeah, so lots of pros. They're definitely some of the top tier containers, but the big drawback is that they're very pricey. They're substantially many times the price of pretty much all the other options, but they do look great. So if you have that income, then good for you, and buy some ceramic pots. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about are these black plastic pots that you've probably seen a lot of places. They're really common. They come in a million different sizes, and they're really cheap. That's probably the biggest pro. The downside is that it is plastic, so you're increasing the demand for plastic by buying them, but if you get them secondhand, you can avoid that. And they can lead to root-bound plants, but that's the same thing that can happen in these ceramic pots or the terracotta. Oh, actually not the terracotta, but the ceramic pots also can create a root-bound effect for the roots, which can cause a stunted growth, but you really only have to worry about that if you're like planting large perennial plants. If you're doing annuals for like vegetables or growing, it'll be just fine. Another big perk for these is they absorb a ton of heat through the black plastic, and so anything in the Solanaceae family, which is like a potato or a pepper or tomatoes and cucumbers too, would do really well with just that added heat because it absorbs so much and then gives it back to or keeps it in the plant's microclimate. So that's a cool thing. I think I'm pretty positive you can recycle them too, so they're not bad. They're like definitely a good option if they're cheap. Okay. Garden plant variety number 3, terracotta. This is also another very like stock standard garden pot that you see in the garden. They're great for outdoor use. They are pretty long lasting. They allow a certain level of airflow to circulate through the roots, which like decreases the root bounding effect that will happen with these pots that don't allow any oxygen flow. They are super porous, and so they can leach some nutrients out over a long period of time, so you just have to be a little more careful with fertilizing. But the biggest drawback to terracotta, they're also very cheap, and they look great, so terracotta is a solid option. Terracotta is also especially good if you tend to overwater your plants, because they absorb so much water. But on the flip side, if you don't like to water your plants, then these will dry out way faster and will lead to just like a lot. Your plant will die just much more easily if it's sensitive to not having enough water and you're not the best at watering, or you're rather forgetful or something. So yeah, can be good if you like watering, but if you don't, definitely don't recommend. But they're very cute, so. Okay, the 4th type of our garden variety plant is these cloth ones. I love these cloth ones. They are pretty sustainable, definitely compostable. They allow lots of airflow for the roots, and the airflow, a like restriction of oxygen to the air to the roots, is what causes the roots to root bound, where they circle the pot and then kind of choke out the plant. And so that doesn't happen because these are super breathable. They're only a couple dollars more than these big plastic ones, and so I think they're worth it, but that's just me. The downside is they can look, I don't know, are not the best aesthetic look for sure. And if you're not into the green sludge look for your garden, you might want to consider something else. But I don't mind green sludge, and for the added benefits that you get from the extra breathability, it's worth it for me. They're also great at draining because it's essentially all drainage. So the next category of containers we're going to talk about is our less than conventional containers, or like sort of like uncommon ones. And so these are, so first of all, unconventional containers, you can plant in just about anything that has drainage or a hole for drainage in it. So like old shoes, you could put a flower in, like I've seen old boots, you know, and those leather ones, and that's cute. I probably wouldn't grow food out of an old shoe. It seems a little bit funny because you like putting that in your body, and so I don't know. If you like it, do it. Lettuce would be great, a shoe. So you can use anything, and I'm going to show you a couple examples of things that I've upcycled into planters. So first off, I have this old mixed waste paper bin. I have a couple of these around, and these came with these holes in them already, and so I don't know why you would use them for anything besides planters. And so I haven't filled these up yet, but I've got some cucumber sprouts that I'm gonna put maybe 3 or 4 in and go put it over in my sunniest spot. The next one we have are these sort of old, and they don't have to be wooden. There's a shape of planter that is these these long window boxes. And they're really nice. They're not super deep, so they're really good for like herbs. I just was given this one, and so I think that they show up around yard sales and like old salvage shops. But I think you can buy really nice ones that are like the cedar wood that don't have a risk of like getting fungal or bacteria on them. But anything that's made with cedar, even just the cedar wood itself, is to make it yourself is pretty pricey. So I don't buy those, but people do, and they look beautiful. And you can also use, this is my cat's old litter box. I got her a new and improved one a few years ago, and I just took some screwdrivers and poked holes in the bottom for drainage, and now I grow, this is mostly arugula and some spinach right now, but I'm trying to do like a successional planting with it, so that's why only half of it is planted. But we'll see, hopefully it works. Yes, and then the last sort of unconventional, but it's pretty conventional planter container would be these hanging pots. There are a couple limitations to them, or cons. One would be you have to have a place to hang them, and so I just drill screws in everywhere to be able to hang plants from, because it just really like doubles your real estate for all the plants that you could put in containers. Because it doesn't take up the ground space, it's just the air, you know, I don't know, space. Yeah, and they're pretty cheap. These are not fancy ones at all. I think I just bought a plant that was supposed to be a hanging plant, and then I put some beads in there so that they'll hopefully grow down. And my cousin made that one, so yeah, they're definitely a great option. Really love them. The biggest drawbacks would be they are a little bit harder to water. I have to get my tallest chair out here maybe once or twice a week to water, but I sort of remedied that by planting with a heavier soil that will just absorb more water. And we'll go into like the best kind of soils too. First of all, you can just use a regular old potting mix soil. I usually go with organic ones like the EB Stones, not the seed starting mix, but just like the gold bag, whatever potting soil one, or like black and gold. But that's if I'm going to be buying potting soil. In this, I just happen to have I buy a lot of soil, and so this just happens to be just an old veggie blend. It's probably got lots of increased nutrient uptake. That's probably because it's been amended with worm castings and steer manure and maybe some algae, just to make sure that it's like real nutrient rich and dense. And so I looked at it and I thought it wasn't so dense. And this is just a guide for if you have potting soil around your house that isn't specifically for pots, or if it just seems kind of heavy or you're a little nervous. So this it looks pretty light because it has the pumice stone in it, but it is a bit more dense than I realized, and so I wish that I would have done what I'm going to show you to do, but I just didn't have any of the pumice stone either. So This is pumice stone, and it's used as a natural aerator for soil. And all of those things are just lava rock variations of processing that have been made to absorb water and slowly release it to make soil lighter and to extend the nutrient release. But I like to use pumice stone because it's the least processed, and vermiculite and perlite is so light it actually just floats to the surface, and so then I have to spend time mixing it back in, whereas this stuff I just throw it in and I don't have to think about it again, even if I compost on the plant a couple years later. And if you want to just fill, like say you have like a big pit of dirt or something and you want to use it to fill up containers because they look so cute, you would want to amend that, or you would for sure want to add pumice or something to make it a lot lighter, but then you would also need to add a fertilizer, and there's tons of local fertilizers and fertilizer abound. So just grab a bag of that and then mix it up, maybe like, I would say like 40%, okay, maybe 50% dirt, like plain old dirt that you have, 30% compost, and then 20% your aeration, which would be, in this case, pumice, but it could be perlite or vermiculite. Okay, and so the last thing I'm going to leave you with is just a couple tricks on how to make your container garden the most successful that it can be. And these are like pretty stock standard tips as far as making sure that you have the right light for the right plant. Lots of vegetables prefer full sun, but some do just fine in partial sun. Like my porch faces east, so I have like beans and peas and lettuce growing. And then also in regards to light, if you have like more shade tolerant plants, just because flowers are nice too, I'll usually terrace them behind using, I have a step here, but I've used this shelf also, and just getting creative with like bricks and such to really maximize the amount of light. And then because the last main tip I have, like tidbit to have filed away in your mind while going about container gardening, would be that your plants in containers are going to require more water than plants not in containers, because they don't have to hold, they just only have this soil. Like you have essentially created just like a little home for it. And yeah, so because it's not connected to the rest of the ground, you gotta water it a little more. So that's my video on container gardening, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment below or email me or get in touch. I think next week I'm gonna put out a video on, it's called Why Are My Seeds Like This? And it's gonna be a troubleshooting seed guide. And so keep an eye out for that. And thank you on behalf of everyone from DNDA, and have a good quarantine. And happy June!